Hi there, my name is Zawadzki and I am here in BEC program lead for accessibility, and today my guest is Wojtek Kutyla. Wojciech is an independent accessibility consultant and UX consultant. Hi Wojciech, welcome to BEC.
Hello Adam, you can call me Wojtek, by the way, it's just gonna be easier. Hello everyone.
Okay, so let's start with the first question. Who within the product lifecycle should be responsible for the accessibility?
Web accessibility is something that bears responsibility of everyone within the software development lifecycle. So you would have, let's say, a person who comes to understanding that they have an idea about a product or a service, and they would already have to think about who their customers might be, obviously, and what sort of abilities or capabilities they have. Then we would go through the stages of research to understand that better. So this would be a duty of those who are usually dealing with user research, user experience design, and so on. Also, business analysis is often required in terms of understanding this at scale. And then you go into the design and implementation phase. So user experience designers, once again, UI designers, many folk who are working on media and content, working together, and then software developers, software engineers, so both backend and frontend, and then quality assurance testers and beyond. So in many ways, and this is very important, web accessibility is a team sport, and it's a responsibility of everyone within an organization. This is also the point where it gets most difficult, because our understanding very often is that web accessibility is something that we put on a cake like a cherry, or that we just set it in one particular moment in time, whereas it just doesn't work like this. If you can remember from what's been happening to the user experience design in the history of it, that was the same thing. We were fighting with the same notion that UX is just somebody, a person that comes and fixes it for us. It doesn't work like this. Web accessibility is a responsibility of absolutely everyone. And in many ways, this actually is its biggest advantage, because it allows everyone in the software development lifecycle to care more about customers and to build empathy for the users.
Okay, so the next question would be, if you would like to develop from the scratch each application, like the mobile application, what unique features do you think are the most important in case of the accessibility?
So this is an interesting question, because it illustrates that we often think of our software, whether it's mobile or something that works in the browser, in terms of features. Practically speaking, we only use software to address some problems that we might have. So when I'm talking about particular features that are accessibility related, I need to remember that any feature can be made accessible. So this is really important for organizations and software engineers and everybody in the lifecycle to understand that there are no special things that you do in order to make an app or a website accessible or not in terms of features, but it's in the approach to building things where accessibility manifests itself. So you would think of web standards that are being used when writing HTML. You would think of particular approach to building applications with IDE development, packages such as Xcode, for instance, where you can specify certain accessibility extensions, so to speak, or features for software to have. And this is how it works. Therefore, if we were to look at it from the perspective of the end user, any app or a website should be free to use with any navigation method, such as keyboard or any other hardware input devices. It should be available to technologies such as screen readers, for instance, that read contents of the screen out loud. It should also be meaningfully written, and the content should be easy to understand, because a lot of accessibility falls onto cognitive understanding of how things work and how users interact with them, where somebody might be reading an error message and just not understanding it. So we need to take care of these things. So I think this is important to remember, that there's nothing special about accessibility per se. There's no certain features of accessibility, but it's just being mindful in how we approach our common development to open our products and services to assistive technologies.
Thank you for that. The next question would be, beyond compliance, of course, with the EU regulations, with the local regulations here in Poland and in Denmark as well. How do you think that financial institutions could turn accessibility into something like advantage for them?
Mm-hmm. Well, regulations are important, obviously, but there's a clear advantage to having accessible products and services, not only for banking institutions, for any company or organization that deals with digital. It's basically getting more customers on board and making them more happy, because this is what accessibility is about at the very end. It's just about improvement of the overall customer experience. And I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, that people don't really want any particular technology or an app. They want to solve a problem. If you solve a problem for someone, they're just going to stay with your company for much longer. If their problem isn't solved and somebody else would solve that problem, they would go elsewhere with no hesitation. Because we have this understanding that everybody loves our products, our customers love us. Not really. They only like dealing with particular things that we allow them to do. And so at the moment when those products or services become more accessible, it only works to our advantage. There's a lot of money within the community of people who, use assistive technologies every day. And that's one thing. But to me, this isn't even the most important aspect of what we do. The most important reason for doing accessibility is because we are just good to other people. And, we have this social responsibility on making things better for others. On a very practical level, though I understand that many of those processes are business driven, it's just a simple matter of targeting a group of users that were previously unable to work with our product or a service, and now they can. Now they can become our, loyal customers. They would recommend us to other customers. So really, there's no way of losing in this. I've never met anyone or any organization who would engage in accessibility, train their personal app, do the work, and then come back to me and say, this just wasn't worth it. This is really the stupidest idea we've had. I've never seen this happen. It's always on the other side of things. Well, people come and say, hey, this is great. We have more customers. They are happier. Our staff are now happier too because they do good things. Everybody benefits.
Okay. So you talked a bit about how the accessibility provides better understanding from customers and from employees. Could you tell me, please, a little bit more about a success story from the financial institution, because we are here in a financial institution, when putting more effort into accessibility gained maybe a better impact, or maybe some users were treated this institution a bit differently, better?
Of course. I think one of the most striking examples is what the Barclays Bank did in the UK around 2014. Barclays are seen at the forefront of accessibility delivery throughout the sector, really, not only in the UK but worldwide. And they had this mobile app that they knew wasn't really good, wasn't really accessible from the customer perspective. It was also broken in a few other ways, but in general just needed a solid redesign. So they understood that this might be the time to do it accessibly. And the initial costing estimation of how we could make this work, how to fix it, was around £300,000, which is a lot of money, obviously, for any organization. But then they thought, okay, so how about we just scrap it and do it from the ground up, doing it accessibly. We'll train our staff in how to do it right. We'll employ some external consultants, perhaps, to help at the beginning, and build it properly from the ground up. So that's what they did. And the overall cost of building this was around £30,000, which is 10 times less. Obviously, bear in mind that's, 10 years ago, long time ago, but still. But the best part was, to me, the fact that when they rolled it out, the ratings in the App Store have raised from 2 stars to 4.5, I think. And, people became much happier with the actual overall product. And that has accelerated Barclays a lot in terms of how accessible they're being seen on the market. Since then, they've introduced many internal procedures, a particular framework that they have for implementing accessibility, and they do many other things. There's, attempt at using sign language on their website, and making apps work better for users with vision impairments, and so on and so on. But generally, they made that first step a long time ago, and their story shows that it's just an excellent idea to invest in that sector, because still, and this is kind of sad and funny at the same time, 10 years later, majority of products that I see in the banking industry, in this particular case, are very badly accessible, sometimes inaccessible at all. To me, it just means that nobody has done the work to realize that, hey, those are customers we can get, those are people we can help. So let's just do that,
Yeah, I think that in banking industry, this is the most difficult part to make sure that all the tables and all the data that we need to show our customers has to be also provided for the people with disabilities. So it should be accessible. But I think that within the industry, we are still looking for the right way to do it. I know lots of the examples from the industry that banking are doing it slightly differently. So maybe could you tell me a little bit more about what is in your opinion, of course, professional opinion, what is the most overlooked part of the accessibility when thinking about implementing it into the financial applications?
Mm-hmm. I can certainly tell you what I think about this. So again, finance or not, this is a separate story, but overall, largely, I think where we're getting it wrong is sometimes trying to reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And like we said earlier, to think that there's something particular about accessibility that we can implement in order to make things better, to install a plugin on our website that should make it accessible, even though we know it wouldn't. To construct a solution, some interaction pattern that would do something in a very unusual way just because we think it would make it more accessible. Whereas accessibility is usually just go back to basics.
Mm-hmm.
We have overcomplicated digital technology to a point that sometimes make things inaccessible just because we can, just because we thought, okay, another animated menu, another incredible button, sliding things, moving things. Those are things that we like and, they're highly aesthetic and just beautiful. But very often, because we don't understand how to do it with having, let's say, web standards in mind or any other, WCAG guidances. We basically just build them rapidly. We build them thinking about their looks and not functionality. So coming back to your original question, I believe that in order to make financial services and products more accessible, we shouldn't be thinking of doing things in an unusual, innovative way, but we should be stripping down things from solutions that are just too complicated at the very core. There's another aspect to it, which is very often overlooked, where accessibility is seen as a solely technical aspect of how we develop things, whereas it's organic. You can't perform fully automated accessibility testing. It's impossible. You have to do a lot of manual work. At the very end, the person who interacts with your system is a human being, and each one of these people would have very different ways of working with it. So you need to observe that. You need to test. You need to be able to adapt that very human-centric point of view, not just box-ticking exercise of like, okay, that WCAG rule and that WCAG rule and we are sorted, because it wouldn't bring anything to the game. This is where we are at biggest fault, I think. We're thinking that this is a process that can be fully automated, maybe even helped with AI or something, where we don't need to suddenly think, but just follow a manual, like if we were using, a new Hoover or setting up a new TV. It doesn't really work like that. It's a very mindful process. And again, I would recall back to user experience design, because it's the same. You know very well that when we are building an interface, some of this is very computerized, automatic work in many ways, something we have to do. Some of it is manual. At the very end, though, it's to do whether somebody is really having their problem addressed or not, like I said earlier. So we can have the most beautiful interface in the world, and it might just not do anything because, let's say, our business proposition and the entire idea or the user journey is having gaps. And if you have a gap in the user journey, you can have it made accessible, but so it doesn't work because there's a gap and somebody falls into that hole.
Yeah.
This is once again the reason for thinking about the holistic approach. And when we start thinking about the holistic approach and blocks fall where they should, then we are sorted.
Well, okay. You mentioned AI, and I wanted to ask you a question about your opinion on how we can maybe implement in future some additional functionalities, maybe use AI to better approach the accessibility for our users. if you think something very out of the box, what it would be in future?
Well, it's quite hard to fantasize about the AI right now, because if you asked me 2 years ago, I would ask you, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? So things are changing very rapidly. And of course, we really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow in terms of this technology, which is quite wonderful in many ways, but also scary and difficult in many other ways. Certainly AI can help with things like image recognition or voice recognition, what else would be there? I really don't know. One thing I know for sure, right now, even though AI can bring some enhancements to the software, that would help users use it, such as, like I said, image recognition or so, or maybe, automated assistance or so. At the same time, AI is only as good as the source that we train it on. And this is where the problem is, because historically we've always been training AI on sources that were promoting inequality, promoting the lack of diversity, were quite on the contrary side of accessibility and inclusion. So until we solve that problem out, we're not going to really benefit from AI much. We will most likely in limited quantity, and I'm sure something will happen there. And I'm sure that we will see not only banking apps, but many other apps being, improved by the AI. In terms of any particular features, it's very hard for me to say, but I would probably bet on image recognition side of things, on maybe authentication side of things. Somehow maybe we can make that easier for people who need easier access. Maybe data presentation, because let's say I can now imagine a difficult table being interpreted well in voice, let's say, or maybe, pre-boarding to a web app being done in some other fashion. Again, this is a very open market, and I think we have to keep an open mind towards those solutions. I'm eager myself to see some of that emerging. I haven't seen anything just yet that would raise my eyebrow and make me think, wow, this is like a groundbreaking thing. I'm sure something might be out there, but I haven't seen it.
Okay, so maybe you told about the AI. Maybe let's think about the technology assistant that could lead you through the application. And could you maybe imagine its role in the application? What do you think? It could be a right approach for that?
It's hard to say. It might work, of course, if we gather enough insight to understand that this is what our customers might need, because this is where we should start. Many problems within the accessibility come from the fact that we basically just build things without consideration for our user needs. So imagine that we've researched it, and yes, indeed, there is a group of people that this would benefit. We need to remember that there's always, apart from other factors like budget and time, and there's also that thing where nothing exists that would work for everyone. Imagine a voice assistant. It's great, perhaps, but what if you find a person, and you would have such customers who are hearing impaired and they can't really use it? So I think the best approach to trialing out things like this is to test them. Again, with accessibility and even AI, we have the same approach of building, a quick prototype. We have a way of testing things rapidly and seeing whether they catch, whether they work. If they do, it might. What you are describing to me, on one side of things, sounds like something great. On another side of things, it sounds like, if I had good content written and a screen reader reading it, I might actually achieve the same result with very minimal effort. So, there's that. I think with AI, the problem here at the moment within accessibility and design in general is that we can do magical things with it, but maybe we sometimes don't need that magic. Maybe, like I said, we need to slow down, look at what we have, and find out that actually by doing something much, much smaller, we can actually improve the situation radically. But, I would be the last one to say that I know what's going to happen in a year's time, because we might have, a banking app that is entirely built by AI, managed by AI, talks to you and does you a head massage. I don't know. We just need to wait and see.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for this, Wojciech. My last question would be if you could please recommend us some additional materials, or maybe like YouTube videos, or maybe some books that are specifically for the people who want to, learn more about the accessibility itself.
Of course, sure. So first, I would point everyone to excellent resources of W3C. which are great and written at many levels. So you can get very technical if you like, but there's also content for those who just are starting with accessibility. There's some courses that they have, free and paid. Excellent. In terms of books, there's a fantastic book from Laura Kalbag called Web Accessibility for Everyone. Very short book, beautifully written. Another book from Kat Holmes that's called Mismatch, How Inclusion Shapes Design, which is also excellent to read. It's not so much technical, more, I would say, it talks more about the kind of societal level of how accessibility and inclusion works or doesn't work, which is something that designers, and I call software engineers designers too, and content writers designers too, everyone who's within that life cycle. Then if you want to get more technical, kind of more into coding side of things, there are excellent books written by my pal Haydon Pickering. He's written a number of them. Anything that comes out of his brain is really worth recommending. The internet is full of resources. Mozilla Development Network has some excellent resources on accessibility and HTML in general. But I think what's really important is to see whether, when you're looking for things to read, whether this is really coming from a credible source. So find an industry expert or go after W3C, like I said, because there's lots of contents that are not that great in quality. Maybe not even so much when they are to do with accessibility itself, but things like HTML or JavaScript. There's lots of courses and written courses and video courses online that really don't teach people doing this in the right way. So I would stick to the official sources. W3C has an excellent set of resources on edX, which is like an online learning platform that are for free. A number of courses that are fantastic. If it happens that we have Polish listeners amongst us, there's also a video course that I have recorded, which you can find in the internet. In general, there's plethora of those resources. Just pay attention to where is it coming from, so you get the best information possible.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you guys for joining us for today's talk. And thank you, Wojciech, for accepting the invitation to BEC. Please stay tuned for more information in regards of the accessibility, and not only the accessibility here in our channel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam. Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy working with accessibility. Take care.